My name is Audrey, and at 67 years old, I thought I understood what it meant to be a mother. I saved for months to fly from Boston to California for my son James's wedding. I carefully packed our 150-year-old family veil, wrapped thoughtful gifts, and carried decades of love across the country. When I landed at LAX, exhausted but excited, I never imagined that the message waiting on my phone would be the beginning of the most heartbreaking weekend of my life. If you're watching this right now, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop your location in the comments, hit that subscribe button, and stay with me, because what happened next is something every parent needs to hear. Growing up, it was always just James and me against the world. His father left when he was only 3, and from that moment, I promised my boy that I would give him everything I possibly could. We lived in a modest apartment in Boston where I worked 2 jobs to make sure James had opportunities I never had. Despite our limited means, we created our own traditions and shared countless small joys. Saturday morning pancakes shaped like dinosaurs' blanket forts during thunderstorms, and bedtime stories that grew more elaborate as he grew older. James was an exceptional child, bright, kind, and determined. I still remember how he saved his allowance for 6 months to buy me a silver bracelet for Christmas when he was 10. That bracelet rarely leaves my wrist even now. Through high school and college, James remained my rock, even as he developed his own interests and identity. He studied computer engineering at Boston University, and I attended every science fair, graduation, and achievement ceremony, bursting with pride at the wonderful young man he had become. 5 years ago, when James told me about the job offer in Silicon Valley, I knew it was an opportunity he couldn't refuse. The tech company was offering him twice his current salary and the chance to work on cutting-edge projects. Though my heart ached at the thought of him moving across the country, I smiled through my tears and helped him pack. "Boston will always be here," I told him, "and so will I." For the first few years, James flew home for major holidays. We established a Sunday evening video call ritual, and I learned to navigate social media to stay connected with his daily life. 3 years after his move, during one of our video calls, James mentioned a woman named Amanda he'd met during a business conference in San Diego. There was something different in his voice when he spoke about her. A softness, a certainty. Within weeks, Amanda became a regular topic in our conversations, and soon she began joining our video calls. Amanda was beautiful and accomplished, a marketing executive for a luxury brand. During those early video conversations, I noticed she was somewhat reserved, often letting James do most of the talking. She was polite, but maintained a certain distance that I attributed to the awkwardness of getting to know your boyfriend's mother through a computer screen. I tried to bridge the gap by asking about her family and interests, learning that she came from a wealthy family in Newport Beach and had attended prestigious schools on the East Coast. 8 months ago, James called outside our regular schedule, his face beaming with happiness. "Mom, I asked Amanda to marry me and she said yes," he announced as Amanda appeared beside him, showing off an impressive diamond ring. I felt a rush of emotions. Joy for my son finding love, a twinge of nostalgia for the little boy who once declared he would marry me, and a flutter of anxiety about what this new chapter would mean for our relationship. During that call, James spoke excitedly about wedding plans. "It's going to be at this amazing vineyard in Napa," he explained. "Amanda's parents know the owners." When I asked about my role in the planning, James assured me, "Of course we want you involved, Mom. You'll be the mother-of-the-groom." As the months passed, however, my involvement seemed limited to receiving occasional updates about decisions already made. I tried not to feel hurt, reminding myself that Amanda's parents were financing most of the wedding, which explained their greater input. Still, when James mentioned they had hired a top wedding planner who had worked with celebrities, I couldn't help but wonder where I fit in. The family veil had been passed down through 5 generations of women in my family. Delicate Belgian lace, with tiny pearl embellishments, it had adorned brides since 1875, including me on my wedding day. Each bride added a small, nearly invisible blue stitch somewhere in the pattern, our something blue, and a way of connecting all the women who had worn it. When James announced his engagement, my thoughts immediately turned to this treasured heirloom. During one of our video calls, I mentioned the veil to James and Amanda. "I've been preserving it all these years, hoping you would want to include it in your wedding," I told them, carefully lifting the acid-free box into view. James's eyes lit up with recognition, but Amanda's smile seemed stiff. "It's beautiful, Audrey," she said politely. "We'll definitely consider it when we choose the bridal accessories." Despite my limited retirement income, I began saving immediately for the trip to California. The wedding was scheduled for June, peak travel season, and flights from Boston to San Francisco weren't cheap. I skipped my weekly lunch with friends, canceled my basic cable subscription, and took on some part-time bookkeeping for a local business. After months of careful budgeting, I purchased a round-trip ticket for $850, wincing as I entered my credit card information, but feeling it was worth every penny to be there for my only child's wedding. Beyond my presence, I wanted to bring meaningful gifts. I spent countless evenings creating a hand-bound memory book filled with photos and stories from James's childhood. I also splurged on a set of crystal champagne flutes from an artisan glassblower engraved with their names and wedding date. These treasures, along with the veil, represented not just my gifts, but my blessing, my way of welcoming Amanda into our small but loving family. As the wedding date approached, I imagined the special moments I would share with my son, perhaps a quiet breakfast the day before the ceremony, or helping him straighten his tie while sharing words of wisdom about partnership and commitment. I pictured meeting Amanda's family and forming new connections that would enrich all our lives. In my heart, I believed this wedding would not only unite James and Amanda, but would also expand our family circle in beautiful ways. How wrong I was. The week before my departure was a whirlwind of preparations. I visited my hairdresser for a fresh cut and color, wanting to look my best for the wedding photos. I bought a new dress, a flattering navy blue sheath with a lace overlay that had cost more than I usually spent on clothing, but this was a special occasion. I had my grandmother's pearl earrings cleaned and polished to wear with my outfit. The most precious preparation involved the veil. I carefully removed it from its protective box, laying it gently across my bed to inspect for any signs of aging. The lace remained remarkably intact, its intricate patterns telling the story of skilled hands from another century. I could almost feel the presence of my mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother as I carefully steamed out the few wrinkles that had formed during storage. "Your great-great-grandmother wore this when she married after the Civil War," I whispered, imagining Amanda wearing it as she walked down the aisle to my son. "Now it will be part of your story, too." I found myself unexpectedly emotional as I returned the veil to its box, securing it with acid-free tissue paper. This wasn't just a wedding accessory. It was a physical connection to our family's history, a tangible thread linking past to future. Packing became an exercise in careful engineering. The memory book and crystal flutes needed substantial padding to survive the flight. The veil box required its own carry-on space. I couldn't risk it being damaged in checked luggage. By the time I finished, I had one small suitcase containing my clothes and essentials, plus a carry-on dedicated entirely to my precious cargo. My flight was scheduled for Thursday morning, 2 days before Saturday's wedding. I barely slept Wednesday night, a mixture of excitement and anxiety keeping me awake. What if Amanda didn't like the veil once she saw it in person? What if her parents found me too simple compared to their wealthy social circle? I pushed these thoughts aside, focusing instead on the joy of seeing my son and being part of his special day. The journey began with a 5 a.m. alarm and a pre-arranged taxi to Logan Airport. Boston was just waking up as we drove through its streets, the early summer sun casting long shadows across the historic buildings. At the airport, the security line stretched endlessly, and I clutched my carry-on with the veil protectively as harried travelers pushed past. "What's in the box?" the TSA agent asked when it went through the scanner. "A wedding veil," I explained. It's 150 years old, and for my son's bride. The agent's stern expression softened. That's special, she said carefully, inspecting the box without disturbing its contents. My mother had something similar for my wedding. Good luck to the happy couple. That brief moment of connection buoyed my spirits as I navigated the crowded terminal to find my gate. The flight was fully booked, and I found myself squeezed into a middle seat between a businessman who immediately donned noise-canceling headphones and a college student who fell asleep before takeoff. For 6 hours, I sat nearly motionless, afraid to disturb either neighbor. The veil box balanced carefully on my lap. A weather system over Chicago caused delays, and our plane circled LAX for nearly an hour before finally landing. My back ached from the uncomfortable seat, and hunger gnawed at my stomach since I'd been too nervous to eat the airline's offering of a dry turkey sandwich. Still, as the plane touched down in California, my fatigue was overcome by anticipation. In just a few hours, I would see my son. I texted James as soon as we landed. Just arrived, can't wait to see you. Let me know where to meet. Navigating the sprawling airport with my bags proved challenging. By the time I reached baggage claim, I was struggling to manage everything. I found a seat near the exit and waited for James's response, watching families reunite around me with hugs and exclamations of joy. 30 minutes passed without a reply. I sent another text, "At baggage claim now, all set whenever you're ready." Another 20 minutes went by. The baggage carousel had long since stopped rotating. The crowd had thinned, and still no word from James. A flicker of worry began to grow. Had he forgotten? Was he stuck in California's notorious traffic? Finally, my phone buzzed with a message. "Hey Mom, slight change of plans. Really busy with last-minute wedding stuff. Can you grab a taxi to the Four Seasons rooms under your name? See you tomorrow, maybe. Sorry about this." The brevity and tone of the message felt like a physical blow. No great you're here, or can't wait to see you. Just logistics and a vague maybe about seeing me the next day. This wasn't like James at all. I typed and deleted several responses before settling on, "No problem. I understand it's a busy time. Looking forward to tomorrow." Outside the terminal, I joined the taxi line, watching other travelers being greeted by loved ones. When my turn came, I gave the driver the hotel address and settled into the back seat, fighting back unexpected tears. The taxi fare to Napa Valley added another $200 expense I hadn't budgeted for. But more painful than the financial hit was the absence of the warm welcome I had imagined. As California's scenery flashed past the window, so different from my familiar New England landscapes, I tried to rationalize James's message. Wedding preparations were stressful. Amanda's family was probably keeping him busy with rehearsals and family obligations. He hadn't seen me in months, but he was seeing them every day. It made sense that he would prioritize their needs right now. Yet a small voice inside me whispered that something wasn't right. The James I raised would have moved mountains to pick his mother up from the airport, especially after she'd flown across the country for his wedding. As the taxi wound its way toward Napa Valley, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of my disappointments. The Four Seasons, Napa Valley, was undeniably beautiful with its vineyard views and elegant architecture. Under different circumstances, I would have been thrilled to stay in such a luxurious place. The lobby featured soaring ceilings, contemporary artwork, and staff dressed in impeccable uniforms. As I approached the front desk, pulling my suitcase and clutching my precious carry-on, I felt distinctly out of place among the well-heeled guests sipping wine in the adjacent lounge. "I have a reservation under Audrey Thompson," I told the receptionist, trying to project confidence despite my travel-worn appearance. The young woman typed on her computer, then looked up with a practiced smile. "Yes, Mrs. Thompson. We have you in a Garden View King room for 3 nights. Checkout will be Sunday morning." I had assumed I'd be staying through Monday given the Sunday brunch James had mentioned for out-of-town guests. But perhaps plans had changed. "That sounds lovely," I said, not wanting to create complications. "I believe my son James Thompson is the groom in a wedding here this weekend. Has he left anything for me? The receptionist checked again. I don't see any packages or messages for your room, ma'am. I tried to hide my disappointment. I had expected at least a welcome note or perhaps a small gift basket, something to acknowledge my arrival. That's fine, I said. I'm sure he's very busy. In my room, which was undeniably beautiful with its plush bedding and marble bathroom, I placed the veil box carefully in the closet and set the wrapped gifts on the desk. Then I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, debating whether to call James or wait for him to contact me. Pride lost to maternal concern, and I dialed his number. It rang several times before going to voicemail. I left a brief message. Hi, sweetheart. Just letting you know I've arrived safely and I'm at the hotel. Give me a call when you can. The next 3 hours stretched endlessly as I unpacked, showered, and tried to relax. I ordered a simple room service dinner. The prices on the menu made me wince, and ate while watching the sunset over the vineyards from my window. Still no call from James. Finally, around 9 p.m., my phone rang. Seeing James's name, I answered eagerly. Mom, hi. His voice sounded strained, not at all like his usual warm tone. James, it's so good to hear your voice. How are you doing? Everything ready for the big day? Yeah, pretty much. Sorry about the airport. Things have been crazy here. He didn't elaborate or ask about my flight. That's completely understandable. I'm just happy to be here, I assured him, pushing down my hurt feelings. So, what's the plan for tomorrow? I'd love to help with any last-minute details. There was a pause, and I heard muffled voices in the background as if James had covered the phone to speak with someone else. When he returned, his voice was even more constrained. About tomorrow. There's been a change to the rehearsal dinner. Amanda's parents decided to keep it small, just immediate family. The words hit me like a physical blow. But James, I am immediate family. I'm your mother. Another pause. I know, Mom. I meant Amanda's immediate family. Her parents want some time with just us before the wedding. They're financing everything, so... His voice trailed off, but the implication was clear. Their money gave them the right to exclude me. I see. I struggled to keep my voice steady. And when will I see you? Definitely at the ceremony on Saturday, James said, as if offering a consolation prize. It starts at 4 p.m. I'll text you the exact address. James? I began, then stopped myself. This wasn't the time to express my hurt or disappointment. Is everything okay? You don't sound like yourself. Everything's fine, just stressed. Amanda's mom, Barbara, has been staying with us for the past 3 weeks, helping with arrangements. She has very specific ideas about how everything should be. The mention of Amanda's mother living with them for weeks while I was kept at a distance stung sharply. I understand, I said, though I didn't. Is there anything I can do to help? No need. Barbara and the wedding planner have it all under control. Another pause. Look, Mom, I need to go. We're in the middle of something here. I'll see you Saturday. Okay? Before I could respond properly, he had ended the call. I sat in the silent hotel room, phone still in hand, trying to process what had just happened. The son who had once called me his best friend now couldn't spare 5 minutes for a proper conversation. The rehearsal dinner, traditionally attended by both families, would proceed without the groom's only parent. I placed my phone on the nightstand and walked to the window, looking out at the twinkling lights of the valley below. What had happened to my sweet, considerate son? Was this Amanda's influence or her mother's? Or had James changed in ways I hadn't noticed during our video calls? That night, I lay awake in the luxurious hotel bed, feeling more alone than I had in years. The excitement I'd carried across the country had been replaced by anxiety and a growing sense of dread about what the wedding day would bring. Sleep came fitfully interrupted by dreams where I searched endlessly for James in a crowd that never parted to reveal him. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear sunlight streaming through the hotel room curtains I'd forgotten to close completely. For a moment, disoriented from restless sleep, I couldn't remember where I was or why. Then, reality crashed back. Today, my only child would be married, and somehow, I had become an afterthought in the celebration. I checked my phone immediately. There was a single text from James sent late the previous night. Ceremony at Silverado Vineyard, 4 p.m. Reception follows. Address and wedding invitation. No good morning, Mom, or can't wait to see you today. Just logistics as if I were a distant acquaintance rather than the woman who had raised him. I pushed down the hurt and opened my social media apps, something I rarely did first thing in the morning. Amanda's sister had posted a series of photos from that morning. The bridal party in matching robes getting their hair and makeup done in what appeared to be a luxurious suite. Amanda's mother, Barbara, was prominently featured helping her daughter with champagne in hand, captioned, Mother-daughter, pre-wedding bliss. The timestamps showed they had been preparing together since dawn. No one had thought to include me in these preparations. No one had even mentioned they were happening. I set the phone down and moved mechanically to get ready. I laid out my new navy dress and pearl accessories on the bed, then opened my makeup bag with trembling hands. I'd splurged on professional makeup for my son's wedding day, but now found myself applying foundation and blush in a quiet hotel room alone with my reflection and thoughts. As I styled my hair, a simple updo I'd practiced several times at home, I thought about the veil waiting in its box. That morning should have been the moment I presented it to Amanda, perhaps sharing stories of the women who had worn it before. It should have been a bonding moment between us, a welcoming of her into our family traditions. Instead, I was preparing to bring it to the venue and hope for the best. I opened the box one last time in my room, running my fingers gently over the delicate lace. Please let her accept this, I whispered to no one in particular. I wrapped the gift boxes carefully, adding handwritten cards with heartfelt messages. For the crystal flutes, may your lives together be filled with countless reasons to raise a toast. For the memory book, the past has shaped the man you're marrying. May your future together create beautiful new memories. By 2 o'clock, I was fully dressed and ready, though the ceremony wouldn't begin for another 2 hours. I decided to head to the venue early, hoping to find James before things got too hectic and offer my help with any last-minute needs. I called another taxi, wincing again at the expense but having no alternative. The vineyard was even more beautiful than the photos had shown. Rows of grapevines stretching across gentle hills, a stone pathway leading to a rustic, elegant barn structure decorated with flowing white fabrics and flower arrangements. A team of workers was still placing chairs in neat rows and arranging final details. I approached a young woman with a clipboard who appeared to be directing the activity. Excuse me, I'm Audrey Thompson, the groom's mother. Could you tell me where I might find the wedding party? She consulted her clipboard. The bridal party is in the preparation suite in the main house. The ceremony doesn't begin for almost 2 hours, though. I know, I said. I was hoping to see my son before things get busy. The woman looked uncertain. Let me check if that's possible. She spoke quietly into a headset, then nodded. Someone will be right out to assist you. I waited near a flowering arbor, admiring the meticulously arranged white roses and eucalyptus that formed a natural altar space. Everything was picture-perfect, from the hanging glass lanterns to the vintage wine barrels repurposed as cocktail tables for the reception. After several minutes, a woman in her early 60s approached, dressed in an expensive-looking pale pink suit. Her blonde hair was arranged in an elaborate updo, and diamonds glittered at her ears, neck, and wrists. Even before she introduced herself, I knew this was Barbara, Amanda's mother. Audrey, she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. I'm Barbara Wilson, Amanda's mother. We've heard so much about you. I extended my hand, which she shook briefly. It's lovely to meet you. Everything looks beautiful. You and Amanda have done an amazing job with the planning. Thank you, she said, as if accepting sole credit. We've worked very hard to make this perfect for Amanda and James. I'd love to see James, I said, and to meet Amanda in person finally. Barbara's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Oh, we weren't expecting you until the ceremony started. Everyone's quite busy right now with final preparations. The message was clear. I wasn't welcome in the inner circle, but I hadn't flown 3,000 miles to be relegated to the status of an ordinary guest. I understand it's hectic, I said firmly, but I've brought something special for Amanda, our family's heirloom veil. I was hoping she might consider wearing it for the ceremony. Barbara looked momentarily taken aback, as if the idea that I might have family traditions worth honoring had never occurred to her. Well, she said after a pause, I suppose you could come to the bridal suite briefly. Amanda is nearly finished with her preparations. She turned without waiting for my response, clearly expecting me to follow. As we walked toward the main house, I clutched my purse containing the carefully rewrapped veil box and tried to ignore the knot of anxiety forming in my stomach. The bridal suite was a flurry of activity. Photographers capturing every moment, bridesmaids in matching pink dresses adjusting each other's hair, makeup artists applying final touches. In the center of it all stood Amanda, already dressed in a stunning gown of Italian lace and silk. She looked beautiful, but also somehow remote. A magazine perfect bride, rather than the warm, young woman I'd hoped would become like a daughter to me. And then I saw James, handsome in his black tuxedo, standing near Amanda with a champagne flute in hand. My heart leapt at the sight of my son. Despite everything, the joy of seeing him in person after so many months was overwhelming. James, I called softly, moving toward him. He turned, and for a moment I saw surprise and something like guilt flash across his face before he composed himself. Mom, he said, stepping forward to give me a brief formal hug. You made it. Of course I made it, I said, trying to keep my tone light. I wouldn't miss this for the world. James introduced me to Amanda, who offered a polite smile and brief embrace that felt more like a social obligation than a genuine welcome. Up close, her dress was even more exquisite, clearly designer and likely costing more than I earned in several months. You look absolutely beautiful, I told her sincerely. James is a very lucky man. Thank you, Audrey, she replied. Her use of my first name rather than any warmer term like Mom or even Mrs. Thompson underscored the distance between us. Barbara hovered nearby, watching our interaction with barely concealed impatience. Amanda, the photographer, wants a few more shots with your father before the ceremony, she interrupted. Actually, I said, seizing the moment, I've brought something I wanted to show Amanda first. I opened my purse and carefully removed the veil box. This is a Thompson family heirloom, a veil that's been worn by brides in our family for 5 generations, including me when I married James's father. I opened the box, revealing the delicate lace carefully preserved for this moment. I thought you might consider wearing it today as a way of connecting to the family you're joining. The room grew oddly quiet. Amanda stared at the veil, her expression unreadable. Barbara stepped forward, placing a protective hand on her daughter's shoulder. Oh, Amanda said, finally, her voice polite but distant. That old thing, it's very vintage, but we've already decided on a modern veil. It's custom designed to match my dress perfectly. As if on cue, a stylist appeared holding a long, sheer veil with crystal embellishments that indeed complemented Amanda's gown beautifully. We had a Vera Wang veil designed months ago, Barbara added with a smile that seemed almost triumphant. It's part of Amanda's complete bridal vision. I felt James shift uncomfortably beside me, but say nothing in defense of our family tradition or my feelings. The veil I'd carried across the country that represented generations of Thompson women was being dismissed as that old thing, while my son remained silent. I understand, I said quietly, returning the veil to its box. It was just a thought, The crystal veil is beautiful and will look lovely with your gown. Amanda nodded, already turning back to her mother and the photographer. James gave me an apologetic glance but made no move to stand up for me or our family's tradition. "Your gifts are in the collection area," he said, gesturing vaguely toward a table in the corner piled with wrapped packages. "The wedding planner has everything organized." I noticed my carefully wrapped gifts had been placed slightly apart from the others, as if their homemade wrapping paper wasn't quite up to standard with the professionally wrapped boxes surrounding them. As I stood there feeling increasingly out of place among the fashionable wedding party, I overheard Barbara speaking to one of the photographers. "That's just James's mother," she said, as if I were an afterthought rather than a key figure in this family union. "Just James's mother. After 27 years of being everything to my son, mother, father, cheerleader, and support system, I had been reduced to an inconvenient addition to someone else's perfect day." Before I could process this fully, the wedding coordinator approached with a seating chart. "Mrs. Thompson, I just wanted to confirm you'll be at table 12 for the reception." I glanced at the chart in her hand. Table 12 was positioned at the back of the reception space, far from the head table where the couple and Amanda's parents would sit. I was seated with distant cousins I'd never met and college friends of the couple, not even at a family table. "Is that correct?" the coordinator prompted when I didn't immediately respond. I looked over at James, now posing for photos with Amanda and her parents, forming a perfect family portrait that didn't include me. He caught my eye briefly, but quickly looked away, as if afraid to acknowledge the hurt plainly written on my face. "Yes," I said finally, my voice barely audible. "That's correct." The ceremony itself was picture-perfect, exactly the kind of wedding that appears in luxury magazines and high-end blogs. White chairs arranged on the manicured lawn faced an archway draped with roses and greenery. A string quartet played softly as guests arrived, the music floating across the vineyard like a gentle breeze. I was shown to a seat in the front row, the traditional place for the mother-of-the-groom. It was the only concession to my role in the proceedings, and even that felt hollow when I realized I was seated at the far end, while the center seats were reserved for Amanda's extended family. When the music changed to signal the beginning of the ceremony, the wedding party began their procession. James entered from the side with his groomsmen, looking handsome and nervous. Our eyes met briefly as he took his place at the altar, and he gave me a small smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. The bridesmaids followed in their blush pink dresses, each carrying small bouquets of white roses. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for. Amanda appeared on the arm of a distinguished-looking man I didn't recognize. Later, I would learn this was her stepfather, who had been in her life since she was 12. Her biological father, though present at the wedding, had not been given the honor of walking her down the aisle. Amanda was radiant in her gown, the modern crystal veil sparkling in the afternoon sunlight. As she passed me, there was no acknowledgement, no smile or nod to her new mother-in-law. Her eyes were fixed solely on James, which I might have found romantic under different circumstances. The officiant welcomed everyone and began by introducing the couple and their families. "We are gathered here today to celebrate the union of Amanda Wilson, daughter of Barbara and Richard Wilson and James Thompson." No mention of me at all, not even son of Audrey Thompson. I had been erased from the narrative entirely, as if James had materialized fully formed, without a mother who had devoted her life to raising him. Throughout the ceremony, I maintained a smile, blinking back tears that threatened to fall. This wasn't about me, I reminded myself. This was James's day, and I wouldn't do anything to detract from his happiness, even as my heart was breaking. The vows were personal and beautiful, clearly written with care. James promised to support Amanda's dreams and ambitions, to be her partner in adventure and her comfort in difficult times. Amanda vowed to create a home filled with love and understanding, to stand by James through every challenge. They spoke of building a life and eventually a family together. a future I could only hope would include more space for me than this wedding had. After the exchange of rings and the pronouncement of their marriage, the newlyweds walked back down the aisle to applause and cheers. I stood with the other guests, clapping and smiling, the perfect picture of a proud mother. Inside, I felt hollow. The cocktail hour that followed was held on a terrace overlooking the vineyard. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres that looked too artful to eat. I accepted a glass of champagne and found a quiet corner watching as guests mingled and congratulated the happy couple. Barbara was in her element, moving from group to group like a queen holding court. She introduced Amanda and James to important-looking guests, her diamond jewelry catching the light with every gesture. Several times I considered approaching them, but they were constantly surrounded by Amanda's family and friends, an impenetrable circle I couldn't seem to breach. When it was time for the reception, I followed the crowd to the beautifully decorated barn. Crystal chandeliers hung from the rafters tables were adorned with elaborate floral centerpieces, and a live band played soft jazz in the background. It was undeniably stunning, but felt more like a society event than the warm family celebration I had imagined. I found my assigned seat at table 12, introducing myself to the other guests, mostly Amanda's family connections, who seemed surprised to learn I was the groom's mother. "Oh, we thought you might be an aunt or family friend," one woman said inadvertently, twisting the knife deeper. The speeches began after the first course was served. Barbara stood first, raising her glass to address the room. When Amanda first brought James home, Richard and I knew immediately that he was special. She began as if they were the arbiters of my son's worth. "We are so proud to welcome him into our family and so grateful he will be taking care of our precious daughter." Not a single mention of James's own family or background. No acknowledgement of the woman who had raised him to be the man Amanda was marrying. It was as if his life had begun the day he met their daughter. I watched, maintaining my smile through sheer force of will, as James danced with Amanda for their first dance as husband and wife. Then came the traditional father-daughter dance with Amanda and her stepfather, swaying to a sentimental ballad. I waited for the mother-son dance that typically follows, but instead, the band invited all guests to join the couple on the dance floor. James never came to claim his dance with me. Instead, I watched from my seat as he danced with Barbara, both laughing at some private joke as she straightened his boutonniere in a maternal gesture that should have been mine. In that moment, something inside me broke. Quiet tears slid down my cheeks as I realized the truth. I had been replaced. Barbara, with her wealth and social connections and forceful personality, had usurped my role as James's mother. And my son, whether out of love for Amanda, or desire to please his new in-laws, or simple weakness, had allowed it to happen. I slipped away from the table, needing a moment alone to compose myself. In the restroom, I splashed cold water on my face and looked at my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me seemed older, sadder than the hopeful mother who had packed her bags in Boston just days ago. "You will not fall apart here," I told my reflection firmly. "You have your dignity, if nothing else." As I returned to the reception, a new clarity settled over me. I would not stay where I was not valued. I would not sit at the back table watching strangers claim my son while I was treated as an afterthought. I had raised James to be kind and considerate, values that were noticeably absent in how I'd been treated this weekend, and I deserved better than this. I returned briefly to my table, gathering my small evening purse. I found a server and asked for a piece of paper and pen, then wrote a note to James. The words came easily now, flowing from a place of hurt, but also self-respect. "James, I came across the country to celebrate your marriage and to welcome Amanda into our family. Instead, I have been made to feel unwelcome and unimportant. I raised you to value family and to treat people with kindness and respect. values I don't recognize in how this weekend has unfolded. I am returning to the hotel and will fly home tomorrow. I love you and wish you happiness, but I cannot stay where I am treated as an inconvenience rather than your mother. The veil that has been in our family for generations will remain with me until there is someone who values its history and meaning. I hope someday you will understand what has been lost here today. Love, always, Mom. I folded the note and asked the server to deliver it to James later in the evening when my absence might finally be noticed. Then I quietly made my way to the exit, the heirloom veil box tucked securely under my arm. No one stopped me. No one even seemed to notice I was leaving. Outside, I called a taxi and returned to the hotel, my heart heavy, but my spirit strangely unburdened by the decision to leave. I had come to California with love and family traditions to share. I would return to Boston with my dignity intact and the wisdom that comes from painful truths. The flight home was a stark contrast to my journey west. Then I had been full of excitement and anticipation, imagining the joyful reunion with my son and the beautiful moments we would share. Now I sat quietly by the window, an empty seat beside me, where I had placed the veil box symbolizing all that had been lost. I had managed to change my ticket for an early Sunday morning flight, incurring a hefty fee, but feeling it was worth every penny to leave the scene of my heartbreak. The hotel staff had been kind when I explained I needed to check out a day early, perhaps recognizing the red-rimmed eyes and subdued demeanor of a woman who had been deeply hurt. As the plane took off, carrying me back toward the familiar shores of New England, I gazed down at the California landscape growing smaller beneath me. Somewhere down there was my son, probably still celebrating with his new wife and her family, perhaps not even aware yet that I had gone. The thought brought fresh tears, which I wiped away discreetly. The first days back in my Boston apartment were the hardest. I moved through my routines mechanically, making coffee, sorting mail, watering plants, all while carrying an invisible weight of grief. I questioned every parenting decision I had ever made, wondering where I had gone wrong. Had I made James too sensitive to the needs of others, making him vulnerable to stronger personalities like Barbara and Amanda? Had I somehow failed to instill in him the courage to stand up for what was right, even when it was difficult? My phone remained conspicuously silent. No call from James asking why I had left. No text checking if I had arrived home safely. The wedding photos began appearing on social media, carefully curated images of the perfect couple and their perfect celebration. I appeared in exactly 2 photos, both group shots, where I stood at the edge, my smile not reaching my eyes. 3 days after the wedding, as I was arranging the veil back in its permanent storage box, my phone finally chimed with a text from James. "Mom, where did you go? The coordinator said you left during the reception." Not "I missed you" or "I'm sorry you felt you had to leave." Just a question that made it clear he hadn't even noticed my absence until someone pointed it out to him. I waited several hours before responding, needing time to formulate a reply that came from strength rather than hurt. I returned to Boston. I wrote finally. I left a note explaining why. I hope you received it. Another day passed before James called. I answered on the 3rd ring, my heart pounding. "Mom," he began, his voice a mixture of confusion and defensiveness. "I got your note, but I don't understand. Why would you just leave like that?" I took a deep breath, centering myself before responding. "James, I was treated like an afterthought at your wedding. I wasn't included in any of the preparations or family moments. I was seated at the back of the reception with strangers. The officiant didn't even mention me when introducing your family. How do you think that made me feel?" "It was chaotic, Mom. There was so much happening. Amanda's parents had certain expectations about how things should be done." "And what about your expectations? What about honoring the woman who raised you alone, who worked 2 jobs to put you through college, who has been there for you every day of your life. My voice broke slightly, but I continued. I brought our family veil, James, a treasure passed down through generations. Amanda dismissed it as that old thing, and you said nothing. There was silence on the line, and for a moment I thought we might have been disconnected. Then I heard him sigh. I didn't handle things well, he admitted finally. I got caught up in trying to please Amanda and her family. They were paying for everything, and they had such specific ideas about the wedding. I should have stood up for you more. It was the beginning of an acknowledgement, but still missing the full understanding of how deeply I had been hurt. It wasn't just about the wedding, James. It was about watching you allow me to be erased from your life's most important moment. It was about seeing you dance with Barbara while I sat alone at a back table. It was about feeling like 27 years of being your mother counted for nothing compared to your new family's wealth and social status. That's not fair, Mom, he protested, but his voice lacked conviction. What's not fair is how I was treated, I replied steadily. I deserved better from you. I raised you to be a man who stands up for what's right even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult. The conversation continued for nearly an hour. Painful, honest, and ultimately necessary. James admitted he had been so focused on making a good impression on Amanda's family that he had neglected his responsibilities to me. He described feeling intimidated by their wealth and social connections, afraid of saying or doing the wrong thing, and being found wanting. They're not better than us, James, I told him gently. Having money doesn't make people more worthy of respect or consideration. The values I taught you, kindness, integrity, gratitude, those matter more than any bank account. By the end of our conversation, we had reached a fragile understanding. The hurt wouldn't disappear overnight, but we had taken the first steps toward healing. James promised to visit Boston alone in the coming months so we could continue rebuilding our relationship. And the veil? He asked before we hung up. The veil stays with me for now, I said firmly. It's not just a piece of fabric. It's a symbol of our family history and traditions. When there's someone who truly values that, then it will be passed on. In the months that followed, I established clear boundaries with James and by extension with Amanda and her family. I would not be pushed aside or made to feel less than because I lacked their financial resources or social connections. I would be treated with the respect I deserved as James's mother, or I would remove myself from situations where that respect was not forthcoming. James visited alone that August, spending a week in Boston that reminded us both of the strong bond we had shared before his marriage. We walked familiar neighborhoods, ate at our favorite local restaurants, and slowly found our way back to honest communication. He admitted that marriage to Amanda was more challenging than he had anticipated, particularly navigating the expectations of her family. They have opinions about everything, he confided one evening as we sat on my small balcony watching the sunset. Where we should live, how we should spend our money, even when we should start having children. And what do you want? I asked, seeing an opportunity to help him find his own voice. I want to make my own decisions with Amanda without feeling like we're always performing for her parents' approval. He looked at me, then really looked at me for the first time since before the wedding. I don't want to lose who I am or where I came from, trying to fit into their world. It was a breakthrough moment. My son recognizing that in trying to please everyone else, he was in danger of losing himself. I reached across the small table and squeezed his hand, not needing to say more. Almost exactly a year after the wedding, James called with news Amanda was pregnant. Despite the lingering hurt from the wedding, joy bloomed in my heart at the prospect of becoming a grandmother. That's wonderful, sweetheart, I said sincerely. How are you both feeling? Excited, terrified. The usual, I guess. He laughed. But there's something else, Mom. Amanda asked me to ask you about the veil. I froze immediately on guard. What about it? She's been thinking about family traditions since becoming pregnant, James explained carefully. She asked if you still had the veil and if you might consider letting us use part of the lace for the baby's christening gown. She said she understands more now about the importance of family history. I sat with that request for a moment, processing the shift it represented. Amanda, who had dismissed our family heirloom as that old thing, was now reaching out, albeit through James, to connect with the traditions she had once rejected. Tell Amanda I'd be happy to discuss it with her directly, I replied, establishing another boundary. This isn't just about the veil. It's about building a relationship between us that honors both of our places in your life. 2 days later, Amanda called me herself, the first time she had done so without James initiating a three-way conversation. Her voice was tentative, lacking the confident tone I remembered from the wedding. Audrey, she began, then corrected herself. I mean, is it okay if I call you Mom Thompson? That feels more right somehow. It was a small gesture, but a meaningful one. Of course, I said. I'd like that. I've been thinking a lot about the wedding, she continued, about how things were handled. I was so focused on having this perfect day that I lost sight of what a wedding is really supposed to be. The joining of two families, not just two people. She paused, and I heard her take a steadying breath. I'm sorry for how you were treated. You deserved better, especially from me. Becoming a mother myself, it's making me see things differently. It wasn't a complete healing of all that had happened, but it was a beginning. We talked for nearly an hour. About the pregnancy, about family traditions on both sides, and yes, about the veil that had become such a powerful symbol in our complicated relationship. I'd like to understand its history, Amanda said. The women who wore it before me, what it meant to them, if you're willing to share those stories. I'd like that, I said, feeling a warmth I hadn't expected. Perhaps when you and James visit next month. The veil remains in its box in my closet, waiting for the right moment to continue its journey through our family's history. Perhaps it will become part of a christening gown for my grandchild. Perhaps one day it will adorn another bride who understands its value, goes beyond the material. What I've learned through this painful experience is that motherhood doesn't end when your child marries, but it does change in profound ways. Establishing healthy boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for maintaining your dignity and self-respect. Forgiveness is possible without forgetting the lessons learned through hurt. And sometimes the greatest act of love is having the courage to walk away when staying would diminish your spirit. My journey from heartbreak at my son's wedding to reconciliation has taught me that healing begins with honoring yourself first. Only then can you offer genuine love and support to others. It's a lesson I hope to pass on to my grandchild, along with the stories woven into the delicate lace of our family veil. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself in a family situation? Has an heirloom in your family carried special meaning through generations? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please subscribe and share with someone who might need to hear that setting boundaries with family is an act of self-love. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that your worth is never determined by how others treat you, but by how you honor yourself.